everyone is having a great summer. This is Gina, psych nurse practitioner. Welcome to my channel where I talk about everything and anything concerning mental health. If you have listened to my last few recordings, it's been on trauma, surviving trauma, whether it's with intimate relationship, family relationships, or at work, being with a boss who's causing trauma, friendships, even, a broad range of different type of relationships that can trigger someone who has had a history of trauma. So today we're going to focus on how first one is the work environment, and or slash if you're in customer service, like myself, being a nurse. When I used to be inpatient, I used to deal with a lot of patients one-on-one, face-to-face. And in the customer service area, especially in healthcare, we all know that many patients have rights, right? The patient has rights. The patient is always right. Ooh, patient is always right. So what I found over the years working as a nurse is that many patients really sometimes can take advantage of that policy. Also, a lot of patients might also look at I remember we used to do a lot of surveys, like post-discharge surveys. I can't remember the name, showing a blank, but there's a type of survey that patients can do and send back into management on how the experience was, especially if they were post-op as well, how their pain management especially was. And if you have a patient who was seeking, right? Some patients come in and seeking opioids and whatever. Now, this is before even like the opioid crisis and all the rules and stuff, and more enlightening came about regarding the use or the overuse of opioids and prescribing by surgeon post-operatively. So a lot of patients might not be happy because maybe they were seeking and wanted more pain medication or whatever, and they couldn't get it when they asked for it, things like that. So they can write back complaining about the nurse assistant, the nurse manager, the charge nurse and stuff. So I'm using nursing just because that's where I am, but you could be anywhere. So on the flip side as well, let's say like you'll have to call like your internet company, like Comcast or Cox or whatever. Sometimes many of the workers or employees in some of those service areas as well, if they have a history of trauma, they can come off, or you're overworked, they're overstretched, they also have their trauma, and you calling have your own trauma, and you're having a bad day, or your service is interrupted, or you've been overcharged, or like Eversource, Eversource, that you're getting bills going up, and you're calling customer service, and the customer service representative is being unempathetic and telling you, Mom, you need to calm down. I've had that where you're already kind of stretched out. Your bill is going up or your service is disrupted. If you're listening to this, I'm sure you know someone who's had that kind of had to interact with customer service, or you are the one providing some type of customer service to a person. And then the thing doesn't go well. And then maybe sometimes it's, hey, I hope this call is being recorded and I need to talk to the manager. You don't want to be that Karen, right? I need to speak to the manager, or the patient will say, well, yeah, you suck as a nurse. You suck as a CNA. I need to speak to the nurse manager. I need to speak with, supervisor. So, and then things can quickly escalate. So how do you deal with those situations? So either you act politely to ask to speak with a different person if that person is triggering you, or you overwhelmed, knowing already going into the call, hey, maybe I'm stressed, I'm tired, I'm hungry. And if it's not going and the person receiving your call is not too empathetic or kind, and kind of maybe shutting you off or cutting you off, or some of them might be asking for so many verification process, date of birth, address, last name, spell it. And they're thinking, I can't hear you. And you're like, oh my God. And then sometimes you're on and say, hey, hold on, I'm just going to check on da 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 da. And then they put you on hold and music is playing, you're waiting. And then sometimes you start boiling because I'm like, oh my God, let's say it's your internet. I've had that happen to me before. I'm working, my internet is off, I'm calling, I have patients waiting for me, I'm running late, the person put me on hold, music is playing. Before I hear, boom, the call is cut off. I'm like, oh my God, they didn't even call me back. There are some people who are kind, they will call you back. They apologize. Some people don't even care. They won't call you back. You have to call back and then wait. And if you're not an urgent issue and you really need to fix it, it's hard. Like let's say Delta. I had to travel with Delta, and at that time when I didn't know any better, trying to call Delta Airlines, it's a nightmare. Or like the visa, had a nightmare situation where I was calling my country, Ghana visa department. OMG. If you ever had an issue with the Ghana visa department and you have a history of trauma like me, and maybe hopefully a bunch of people working there also have a history of trauma, or they carry the same kind of mentality we have in Ghana, and which they do because I actually ended up having trouble there. They're not picking up your calls. Emails are like robots answering you. It's not individualized. And you go there and come to find a bunch of people were sitting over there. Nobody was answering the calls. So that kind of easily sets you off if you're already kind of like my case. I was like, had changed my flights a bunch of times, I had to pay fees to change my flights, was calling, nobody was picking up. My visa is already late. My flight was the following day. I had to pay for gas to drive all the way to New York to go to the office to deal in order to get there. And the people were just lounging around, chatting, eating. The phones were ringing because I was sitting there and hearing the phone were ringing. Nobody was picking up. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of people being paid on tax dollars. And then the manager, I was escorted based on my story. I was like, I really needed to because my flight wasn't as I already changed my flight. The manager told I paid fees. I didn't want to change my flight anymore and I needed to travel. And I was traveling with kids. And the manager, when I went in there, he had two phones. He was just leisuring, just not too serious in the work that he was doing. I'm very like serious with work, when work at time. And when other people are not having the same mentality or value there at work, it just can so easily throw anybody off, right? Especially if you do have a history of trauma and you don't have enlightenment on it, you're triggered and you get very escalated easily, you might not get what you need. So with that being said, I wanted to kind of highlight, if you have trauma and the people in customer service also has their trauma, most likely they do, and you're getting escalated and they're telling you, "Ma, wait a minute, mom, 1 second." And then calls get cut off and things like that. How do you deal with it? So like two or three tips I'm going to throw out there. So be mindful going in there of how you're already feeling, right? Pick up a time of day, if possible. Sometimes it's not, that you're a little more chilled to deal. Right, going into the call, making sure you're taking a lot of breaths. Breathing can really reset our nervous system. So because trauma is like injury to the nervous system. So when it's injured and you're working through it, it's like having a wound. And the wound is not truly completely healed yet. Sometimes, depending on the trauma, sometimes it's a lifetime situation and might not be healed. It's an ongoing daily process. So really being self-aware, coming into the call with a lot of preparation, deep breaths. If you're like in my case, I was running late, letting patients know, notifying them if possible, you're running late or rescheduling so you have time to take care of the issue. If you're in healthcare system, let's say you're a nurse or a nurse assistant and the patients are really getting, on you, they're not being too nice, they're being entitled, which is this lot. There's a lot of entitled patients. And nurses already, we are overwhelmed, we are short-staffed. And every 2 minutes, nurse, I need you. I need my med. I need to go to the bathroom. Patient is falling. You have the CWA patient who's jumping, running the hallway. You have too many patients per one patient. You are stretched, and the patients are not kind and not nice. What do? Take minutes. Try to see if you can collaborate with a team. I used to do that. I had a great team, by the way, when I used to work in the ICU. So we take turns, we take breaks, go to the bathroom for a little bit, come back, have another nurse watch your patient, really have good rapport with the nurses' aides. If you're a nurse aide, have good rapport with the nurses. You have a good supervisor, advocate for yourself for the unit to get a little more, maybe a per diem person to help out, but really making it known ahead of time that you really stretch, your assignment is heavy and you need backup. But if you don't speak up and you're going into it and you're being all kinds of attitudey and you're overwhelmed as a patient, I've been there too as a patient where you can be thrown off by the nurses' inattention and attitude. And if they're overwhelmed, yes, fine, but you're at work and work is work. So really finding a way to address that and leaving your stuff, like the trauma stuff, behind at the door when you come into work. So it's really important to know some of this stuff and learning to manage so you can keep your work. Some reason, I think for me, I had core resilience. I work in the ICU for over 10 years. I love every minute of it. I still miss it sometimes. It was a great time and season of my life. But for some reason, I really just walk the hallways. I loved it. There are times where maybe I get, here and there, I get overwhelmed or whatever, but I was just feeling privileged really to be there and serving my patients and whatnot. Well, there are times where a patient might complain about me because sometimes I have to set boundaries and whatnot. But I really know that really taking breaks, going to the bathroom, going out for a little walk, making sure you're taking your lunch break, your dinner break, getting some snacks if possible, so you can refuel. Because when you're low on sugar and you're hungry or stressed out, you have some stuff going on behind the work and you're carrying that to work. I've seen a lot of nurses or practitioners, so to speak, even doctors too, who have made crucial mistakes or who don't have good bedside manners and throw a lot of patients off. Because sometimes patients are also in dire situations or even clients looking for service, whatever the service is. So if you're in the service industry, it's a lot. Oh, and then I forgot to mention, like, people who also do front desk work, patients who call. When you're working the front desk, it can get so overwhelming so easy. Patients that are mean to you on the phone, they're hanging up on you, they're threatening to call the manager to get you fired. So working in the service world can be very stressful and overwhelming, because I've been in service world as a nurse, I'm in mental health now, and that can also be daunting, really not empathizing with your patients or something, not carrying your words empathetically. I've been on both sides of the world. And when you have trauma or the service provider also has trauma and both of you are clashing, but when you are coming in prepared, the outcome might be a little different. So breaks, preparing, breathing through it, changing, asking for somebody else. Don't come in trying to jeopardize that person's work. You don't know what that person could be going through. I just want to say, we all carry our stuff. You don't know. Come to somebody with understanding. Come with somebody with trying to at least find a compromise. Don't come in trying to jeopardize. One of the things that I can't stand is people who come in trying to jeopardize other people's work, because you don't know. They have children, they have bills. You don't want to come and say, hey, I want to tell on you, I want to get you fired. I've had that, and it's awful. So people like that, they have their own stuff, and they might not be there yet to work on their stuff. So today's video was just for shout out to service people, nurses, all of it. I'd say nurses just because that's where I am. So I'm shouting out to my other nurses because it's not easy. Teachers, officers, firefighters, name it. If you're in the service industry, it's tough. Even in the banking industry. So that's my view. I'm not going to go on and on, but those are my few tidbits to say being in the service industry can be overwhelming. And if you have trauma, or the person who has trauma can trigger each other and can blow it up. And it just will delay getting what you need. So coming in, be mindful is so important. All right, I'll catch you at the next video.